Welcome back to Genesis 15. We're in the middle of a covenant ceremony. The Lord has already used a covenant formula, and he's asked Abram to get some animals together for a ceremony. Abram has cut those animals up, well, not the birds, and set them out. And now some time has passed, and so we start with the paragraph with the time reference. We have Vayihi Hashemesh Lavo. So Vayihi is a common way to start a paragraph, and then we also have this time reference, Hashemesh. The sun was Lavo, to enter. So we need to understand the idiom. When we are in the ancient Near East, we're oriented toward the east. The west is behind us. We've talked about that before, that in front of is east, left is north, right is south, behind is west. And when we are talking about sunset, we're talking about the sun going down. So the sun is going to enter the Mediterranean or the earth or the underworld, but that's the expression for talking about sundown. So we're getting close to sundown, but the sun has not set yet. So it happened near sundown. V'tardema nafala al Avram. Tardema is a word that refers to sleep or a deep sleep. And then nafala is a 3FS cal perfect from nafal. So a deep sleep fell onto Abram. Obviously, it's not like a falling object, and so fell might not be good English, or at least not anymore. It's probably what we have in the King James Version. A deep sleep came over Abram. And if you're thinking, well, why do I have this out to the margin? And I kind of go back and forth on this a little bit. When we start a paragraph with something that is the first action in a sequence, and then it's continued by preterites, I will often treat that first thing being out to the margin, because I feel like it's got to be on the same level as the preterites, because all the preterites are depending on it. But some people would indent it, say, hey, it's background information, or setting information more properly. In any case, deep sleep came over Abram. V'henei ema chasheka gedola nofelet alive. So now the narrator is grabbing our attention by using v'henei. Deep sleep came over him, or if you're treating it strictly as background, had come over him. And then guess what? Right, something that you're not expecting. Well, we have ema chasheka, and then we have a text critical note A, because some editor of BHS is not expecting those two to be together in a row like that. So we have darkness, we have dread, and then we have gedolah, great. So we could put them all together. A great dark dread was falling on him, was overcoming him. The text critical note just says GL for gloss, suggesting that the editor doesn't think that these two words ought to go together like that, that if they both had been original, there would have been something different, like a vav in there, or maybe the first one in construct. And then it's also tough to bring into English if we want to use all three words. So for the attention grabbing v'henei, I used and get this. Then a great dread was coming over him, using a participle in English for where we have a participle in the Hebrew. And then we get a preterite advancing our timeline, Vayomer le'Avram. And then he said to Abram, Yadoa Teda. So we can see that the first one is from Yada, because all the root letters are there. We see the second one also has the dalet and the ayin. It's also from Yada, but the first yod has become part of that seireh underneath the tav. So it's a cal imperfect 2ms from Yada, preceded by a cal infinitive absolute. We got the kametz under the first radical and the cholam with the second radical. Slightly over half of the infinitive absolutes in the Bible are like this one. We call them paronomastic. They are built on the same root as the main verb and occur right before it, and they reinforce the modality of that verb. Our translations usually say something like know this, know for certain, which is an imperative in English, and this is not an imperative form in Hebrew, but you can use the imperfect like an imperative both in Hebrew and in English. So that translation is okay. We could get a little more loose with our translation and do something like, I want you to know for sure. You should know for sure, for certain. Ki ger yehyeh zaraka be'aretz lo lahem. You should know that ger is an interesting word that we don't have time to fully develop here, but King James was sojourner. Some translations say stranger, foreigner, resident alien, different terms for this. But your seed will be ger. You'll be strangers, foreigners that live in another land, and then we actually say be'eretz. So your descendants will be strangers in a land lo lahem, not belonging to them. So a land that is not theirs. And then we have va'avadum. And let's take that apart. What is the mem on the end of avadum? Well, it's the mem that came from haim, the third masculine plural pronoun. So we've got a 3MP pronominal suffix. At the beginning we have vav patak, but no dagesh and no prefix. So this is not a preterite. We are, however, following yehyeh, right? Yehyeh was a kal imperfect of haya. This is a vav plus a perfect consecutive, or a vekatal form. And we didn't talk about the u there at the end. What was the u? We get that for plural verbs. So this is a third common plural kal of avad with a 3MP suffix. And they, what should our verb tense be in English? It's going to be future, because we're following yehyeh. So a vekatal, vav plus perfect consecutive, either continues the framework of the previous verb or it will advance it one step, either logically or temporally. So your descendants will be ger, and they will serve them, right? The people who own the land that you don't own. Then we have ve'inu otam arba me'ot shana. So arba is, let's see, echad, shnayim, shalosh, arba. Arba is 4, me'ot from me'ah, 100. 400 shana, year, years. Hebrew doesn't use plural forms once our thing that we're counting gets over 10. What about that verb? We have ve'inu. So we see the u at the end, just like avadum had an u at the end of the verb before the suffix. So a third common plural, or a plural something verb, we go to the beginning, there's a simple vav with shava, and then we have an ayin. This time the ayin has a chirik, and then we see a nun with a dagesh. So if we have chirik dagesh as our ID badge, what stem do we have? Right, that would be a PL. A PL of something has been lost for that root. We've lost a final hey. Now the form ana that we usually run into, or the root ana that we usually run into, means to answer. But there's 4 different verbs ana, and this one isn't the one meaning to answer. In the kal, it would mean to be humble, and this is a PL, so it's going to make humble, well, humiliate or oppress. And they will oppress them 400 years. So you'll notice that we switched who the subject of the verb is without having anything explicit there, but we can make sense of it. They will serve them, right? Your descendants will serve them, who we now know to be, or later know to be, the Egyptians. And they will oppress, right? The people that they are serving will oppress them. The Egyptians will oppress them for 400 years. And in both cases, we have a vav plus perfect consecutive, and it's carrying forward the framework of that verb yehia, the imperfect. So this is a little bit of a twist in what we've had in the chapter so far. It started out with God making promises, protection, and Abram asking, well, what about that promise of seed? And then we got assurance about that, and we start this covenant ceremony. And then we're told, well, the seed is going to have to serve an oppressor for 400 years. Wow, that's a little bit hard to swallow. And we'll get a little bit more clue perhaps with the next paragraph about how that relates to the nature of this covenant and the Mosaic covenant. So stay tuned for that.